Hello, everyone. Welcome to this little conversation with Andrew, the CEO of the KOIN Group. I'm a founder or something of GFAM, and we just like to hang out and talk about the things. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. So I noticed a couple of days ago that KOIN mining was at 99%. So we might have even hit 100% now. I'm not too sure. But what does this mean? Should I be excited? Should I be disappointed? Where should I be on my emotional spectrum?
Well, I don't want to tell you how to feel, but yeah, we're at around 99,300,000 at the moment. At the moment of this recording, so it may be the case that by the time somebody's watching this, everything will have been mined. I think it'll probably take maybe another week to get for the remainder to get mined,
and that's because the difficulty goes up, right?
Yeah. Ever since the first coin was mined, the difficulty has been going up, and so I mean it's a little hard to wrap your mind around, or at least for me, because most are mined. So does that mean it's going to take infinite time for the just remainder of the 700,000? But to give you an idea, yesterday we were at 99 million, and today we're up 300,000. So I think it'll go in the next week. And as far as how to feel about it, I think a lot of people are going to be sad that they got to miss out on the mining period. But it'll be traded on Uniswap up until the snapshot, which should happen pretty close to the mainnet launch. So, we're still developing our testnet, and once the testnet is out, we'll be working towards the mainnet. And as we approach that, we'll be putting out a notice saying like, hey, the snapshot's going to happen on this date, and then the mainnet will launch. And so up until that time, you'll still be able to get it on Uniswap. I'm sure that there will be, liquidity and people coming in and out. And then once the mainnet launches, there will be some inflation on the mainnet. And so you'll be able to get some more coin by either producing blocks or staking your coin. So there will be many more opportunities and many more ways to acquire coin going forward.
And so will there be like a Uniswap type thing on mainnet? Like, will people be able to purchase coin on mainnet?
Yeah, so presumably,
someone's just going to build that.
Yeah. So the cool thing about KOIN, as we've discussed before, is that we get to develop it in reverse because of modular upgradability. Everything, all the features people typically associate with a blockchain are written in smart contracts, and really all the work that we've been doing up until now is getting the microservice architecture up and running, so that we have a general purpose blockchain on a microservice architecture. And we have this blockchain daemon that is designed entirely around this idea of I listen to smart contracts to code for my operating system. And so that enables that blockchain to be really minimalist, but also highly upgradable. And so that means that, all those features that people are going to be looking for in the mainnet, we haven't started working on them yet. We have designs, we have ideas, and we look forward to presenting them to the community and getting their feedback and working with them on implementing them. And so in all probability, we'll have things like a token contract, like an ERC20 token contract, an NFT contract like the ERC 721. And we'll probably have an automated market maker on the mainnet so that at launch, if we've got this token protocol and people are creating these tokens, wouldn't it be great if they could go in and out of the different tokens, including the base token? And so in all probability, there will, Uniswap is a automated market maker smart contract. And so, in all probability, there will be a system contract automated market maker, in which case there would be something like Uniswap baked in. but that also wouldn't stop a user, meaning a developer,
Yeah.
from launching their own automated market maker smart contract, just like Uniswap, without fees. And so, there's going to be probably a whole lot of options.
Gas fees, they might put their own fees in as part of their tool.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, it wouldn't require fees, and that would enable the developer to maybe increase their profits, which is great.
Yeah. And so will KOIN or the KOINOS group, will you be looking to put coin on exchanges? Or you won't worry about it? Like, how do you feel about that whole side of things?
So it's a really important, part of the reason why we did this whole decentralized launch, and this fair and open launch with proof of work mining. Part of it was to decentralize the initial distribution so that we could bootstrap a fully decentralized community, a fully decentralized blockchain when we launched the mainnet, because we feel that that's something that's missing from the general purpose blockchain space. Like even Ethereum did an ICO. And so insiders have this dominant control. Another benefit of this is that it's a strong foundation on which to make the argument that coin shouldn't be viewed as a security. Now, we're not trying to get around securities regulations. No. We're trying to launch it the right way, which means not creating a security, not selling a security to consumers, but without the protections that they enjoy, or specifically American consumers, I suppose. And so with respect to getting listed on exchanges and things like that, like obviously as the group launching it, as a company, we want to be leaders in the KOINOS community. But we also have to be very careful about the actions that we take and whether they would introduce a risk of coin being deemed a security.
Right.
We don't want to sacrifice the long term for the short term, and so if it takes a little, coin will get on exchanges.
Right.
We feel that that's pretty inevitable, assuming that we produce something that's of incredible value to developers and enables them to build amazing decentralized applications. It's just a matter of when. And what we don't want to do is try to push for something that is ultimately going to, turn coin into a security.
I liked how you called yourself the leaders in the community as opposed to like, it's our community or the owners of that community. So that's really great. So it might really be up to people who hold a lot of coin, who might want to see it on exchanges so they could sell it more than you guys pushing that. Is that kind of the thought?
Kind of. I mean, I think, if community members and community leaders took the lead on that project and wanted to loop us in and needed our help, I think that's something that we could do. But, I think I look at it from a slightly different angle, which is that we want to be focusing all of our attention and resources on the product.
Yeah.
And stuff like exchanges and stuff, there's a huge amount of pressure to divert our attention and resources on that. And that's just really not who we are. We're product people. We think that, the best marketing is a great product. We have our mission and we have our goals and we have a thing that we want to bring to life and bring to market that we think it, may very well outlast us. And so, in that context, sacrificing, I think it's very revealing about other projects when they, take these actions and say these things and put out these messages that make it very clear that all they're about is the next pump. And, they just signal in an infinite variety of ways that they're not confident in their product. They don't believe in their product. And all they're really out for is trying to keep the price up, trying to keep that liquidity up. And they don't believe that the product itself, is going to create that demand and interest. And it's like, I mean, Tesla sells plenty of cars without having to do that. They sell plenty of their shares without having to put out commercials about why you should invest in Tesla. And it's because they have a great product.
Yeah. Like, I think their marketing or their advertising budget is zero, where Ford was like, I don't know, 2 billion or 5 billion, or like just something astronomical. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if people have missed out purchasing coin, the mining is coming to a close. There is going to be liquidity on Uniswap, but at some point we're going to switch over to Mainnet. And so at that point, where do you think people could purchase coin? It would just be off other people that already hold it, I guess, and wherever they want to sell it.
Well, I think up until the mainnet launch, Uniswap is going to be the place to go.
Okay.
We might get listed on exchanges before then. Until it happens, we really won't have anything to say about it.
Yeah.
We're pretty confident that, I mean, the beauty is that decentralized exchanges are becoming a lot more user-friendly and a lot more accessible. And so there's going to be so many options.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this stuff is a double-edged sword. I think for anybody watching this right now, and look, it's not going to be that many people, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's not going to be millions of people. What you're learning right now is that the supply of this token is about to dry up. I think that's pretty valuable information. That's good news for you. And a lot of people aren't going to know that. And over the next 6 months, far more people are going to be learning about Koinos than have learned about it in the total history of Koinos.
Yeah.
And so, whether that creates an opportunity for you or not is really up to you and how you view the world. Once the mainnet launches, there are going to be opportunities to acquire more coin by basically operating a node and staking your coin. The way we design these systems, I think maybe the best answer to your question is to view the mining process as this micro example of how we design these systems at the macro level, where you should almost always feel like when you find it, you're a little bit late, and so it's kind of like that by design. And the reason why inflation is so important and why Koinos Mainnet will mint new tokens every year is precisely to maintain that dynamic where there's always an incentive for people to join, for people to participate, and for people to add value. Otherwise, you get a very stagnant, very unequal economy where the people who got in early are just making more and more money for doing less and less.
Yeah.
And so this is exactly why inflation is so important, is because it enables us to incentivize people who are new to the ecosystem. But this focus on exchanges, which I think it's good that you brought it up, it's such a common thing. One of the things that we're most proud of with Koinos is that it really harkens back to the original days of Bitcoin, the original days of Ethereum, and we very much view ourselves in that progression, in that family, not as a competitor to either of those protocols, but as a new alternative that's based around feelessness. You've got this great gold-like digital currency. You've got this great general purpose blockchain that is built on top of a fee-based structure. And what we want to deliver to you is this highly evolving, highly developer and user-friendly protocol that's entirely feeless. And back in those days, the idea of spending so much time and energy thinking about centralized exchanges was antithetical to the entire ethos of what we were trying to do. I think centralized exchanges have absolutely a critical role to play in the economy. But the idea that, it should be the focus and it should consume so much of people's attention, I think definitely goes against our philosophy as an organization. We're definitely view ourselves more of that ilk, where it's like, you know what, this stuff, the first solutions should be decentralized. Centralized solutions should be secondary, if at all.
Yeah. I mean, I see centralized solutions being really good for people coming into the market, people that don't really understand blockchain. They just want some experience. I think that's where, you know, the Coinbases are really valuable. But yeah, like once you get past paying their huge fees, that's when you get into the decentralized and, you know, the actual proper use of blockchain technology. And I guess like Binance has been a really interesting, you know, I didn't think people would buy into the Binance supply chain because it was so centralized, but because their fees are so much lower, you can see that people are really excited, even though they know it's, you know, significantly more centralized than Ethereum.
Yeah, and I think Binance Smart Chain is a great example to bring up. I mean, I can't tell you. So most people, let me clarify. Most people, when we say Koinos is feeless, they go, great, I'm in. But there's like, they're just like, well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But they say it in a way that it's like, oh, I never heard of that idea before. But then some people, a smaller percentage, still say to me, well, is feelessness important? Why is it a big deal? A lot of chains have very small fees. And I think Binance Smart Chain is a perfect example of that, where fees are such a source of friction and cognitive load and poor user experience that people will accept almost any solution.
Yeah.
And we're here going, well, why not reduce it to zero? And so I think when people see Binance Smart Chain and Koinos, I definitely think, look, the whole value proposition of this space is decentralization. And so I think that, you know, I'm sure there will be a place for Binance Smart Chain, but I actually think it's a great advertisement for Koinos. And just on the topic of exchanges, you know, I do think that, you know, the user experience thing that you said, you know, onboarding regular people into the crypto space, I do think that is the role that they play.
Yeah.
And I also think that, you know, is something we want to do as well. It's very in line with our objectives. We want a great TypeScript developer who knows nothing about blockchain to be able to immediately launch a smart contract on Koinos with ease. And we want users to be able to start using those apps with just as much ease, because there's no fee-based barrier. There's no paywall. And so that is, I think, the major reason why we do see opportunity for partnerships with centralized exchanges. But I think from our perspective is that we want exchanges who share our values and who understand, who see and appreciate the value of Koinos, and who want to help that project succeed. And the longer they wait, you know, the more success Koinos has, the more adoption that it has, you know, I think we're going to reach an inflection point where a lot of exchanges are extremely eager to use Koinos. And I think that's part of the reason why we don't want to necessarily rush it. In addition to that previous point about just being very careful about a community, being very careful as a community about the regulations around the involving the SEC. I think we all have to not be naive and educate ourselves and understand the rules that are in place, and make sure that we move forward as a community intelligently.
That's not something communities are famously known for.
Well, that's why leadership is important.
Right. So this is all super exciting. Like, I really love this direction. So then I guess from the Koinos group, how are things going with you guys? Is Testnet still just on the horizon? Like, are you happy with your progress? I'm guessing no one's ever happy with their progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's my job not to be happy with our progress. That's one of my titles, head of
It's one of your
dissatisfaction with progress.
resume dot points.
Yeah, yeah, no, but the guys have been doing amazing work,
Awesome.
and they have a lot to be proud of, and yeah, development has been going great, going largely as planned, I would say.
Awesome.
We we have uh, an internal test net working. We have 5 or 6 microservices all communicating with one another. And so, we should be able to meet our public guidance. And yeah, we've hit some internal goalposts that are pretty exciting. So we no longer, so when building Koinos, one of the hardest parts for us has been building this blockchain on a microservice architecture and figuring out, because it's the first blockchain to use
Right.
such an architecture, um, figuring out how to implement that. Thankfully, microservice architectures are becoming the dominant architecture within the software space. And so there's lots of tools out there that are available to us, but integrating them into a blockchain solution requires also developing your own novel solutions and solving novel problems that you can't just Google or go on Stack Overflow, right?
Yeah.
So it's really challenging, and part of the way that we solve that problem is by leveraging existing tooling from other blockchains, like the Steam blockchain, which is, our previous project. And so, using things like AppBase, which was the plugin, which was part of the plugin architecture that Steam used to kind of get the blockchain up and running. So there were these various components that we were using from other blockchains to just get it up and running, get individual microservices up and running so that we can test them and so that we can enable them to interface with other important components like the message queue, which kind of organizes all the messages of the microservices. But the important milestone that we hit, I think it was last week, is that we removed all of that kind of scaffolding that was, helping our microservices boot up and communicate with one another. And so we now have these microservices all working on their own, serving their functions, communicating with one another. And we even, and operating on all kinds of different machines. In fact, one of the coolest things I found was we had one of our engineers was running part of their node on a Raspberry Pi,
Oh, no
and
way.
the other part of, yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
oh yeah, yeah. And but even cooler, the rest of the node was running on his regular machine. The microservices on the Raspberry Pi and the other machine were communicating with one another, broadcasting blocks to the network and receiving blocks from the network as if it was a single node. And so that really highlights the value of the microservice architecture itself, because you can do things like that. And it becomes especially important when you start moving your infrastructure to the cloud, where you want to be scaling up and down different microservices and positioning those microservices on different types of infrastructure in different locations in the world. And so, in all probability, Koinos Group will be running one node.
Yeah.
But there's going to be lots of instances of the microservices. They're going to be operating all over the world and communicating with one another, but functioning as a single node. And so that's super exciting, cool. And of course, that's a major step towards releasing the testnet. All of that stuff needs to be done before we can release a testnet.
I'm super excited to run a Koinos miner on my watch. I'm going to get a special Coinos watch so I can just run it as a node. It's going to be great.
That might take a couple of years.
Maybe people's cars will be running Coinos nodes just as they're driving around.
Wow. I mean, that might very well happen. I mean, they're gonna, Teslas are gonna have a ton of compute in there, and Coinos nodes will be highly accessible. And that's, that's like a core value of ours, that we really do want to make sure that ordinary people can run a node on ordinary computers. And the nice thing about this microservice architecture is that it gives us a lot of wiggle room there, because, maybe, because at the end of the day, we can make the blocks as big as we want. Yeah. It's just a question of whether anybody will be able to run a node. But with the microservice architecture, we can say, hey, just run the P2P microservice and connect to somebody else's cluster of microservices. And so you can participate and run part of the infrastructure of Coinos, and share in the rewards without having to run the entire node. And so that puts the community in a stronger position where they can say, you know what, we want bigger blocks, we want faster block times. Now, another benefit of the modular upgradability is that 2 years from now, as the blockchain starts to get big, but say, everything is working really well and we actually want it to grow bigger. We actually feel comfortable with letting it grow bigger, and we want to increase the block times for some reason, or we want to increase the block sizes. Then this enables the community to say, okay, you know what, that's fine. We'll do that, because we have this other software that enables people to lend their compute for specific microservices. And so we still have a sufficient level of decentralization and participation and accessibility and scalability. And so we can afford as a network to do that. And all we need to do is an in-band upgrade to a single smart contract, and boom, we can have faster block times and larger blocks. I mean, maybe there's some kind of hardware innovation in the meantime too, that enables us to, take that option. And that really highlights the benefit. There's the combination of modular upgradability and the microservice architecture kind of working together.
Yeah, it's wild to think. Like, I'm sure there's some like mathematical formula. It's like, as you bring down the accessibility of something, it then means, an extra billion people can, or an extra billion devices can now run that thing. There's got to be like a really flat pyramid with that, I'm sure, especially as, Starlink rolls out and people from Africa and Asia are getting more and more access to the internet that they've never had before, and access to devices that, might not seem so strong, but could potentially run a Coinos node. So that's super, super exciting. There's a lot of accessibility there.
Yeah. Well, one of the big lessons that I learned from our time at Steemit, and I think we all learned from working on the Steem blockchain, is that you certainly can't predict the future.
Yeah.
So you don't know what tools are going to get built. You don't know how hardware is going to change, but most importantly, you don't know how people are actually going to use your blockchain. And it's not until they're using it and you see exactly how they're using it, and you see how that usage impacts the infrastructure and the cost of the infrastructure. There's no mathematical model that you can use to accurately model these things, because it's so complicated. There's such a high degree of uncertainty, and they all feed back on one another. So there's really, in a lot of cases, there's nothing you can do but release your product, get it in the hands of users, see how they use it, and then be prepared to make modifications and upgrades. And that's why modular upgradability was so important. And what I see in the space right now is every project struggling to do two things, which is conform to the unpredictable user behaviors, but also mold user behaviors to the platform that they built that they can't change. And that makes their lives a whole lot harder than our lives will be, because for Koinos, it'll be, how are users using it? All right, let's change it.
Yeah, yeah. And how are they using it a year from now and 3 years from now and 10 years? Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for this. This is obviously very insightful. Like, I think lots of people, ask me about the exchanges and how to get Koinos and that sort of stuff. So it is really useful to know what the plan is in the future. So thank you. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And it's always nice talking to you.
Yeah, no, well, one last thing.
Yeah.
On the topic of exchanges, and I appreciate how eager people are to get their hands on this, but it's still very early. I think that's one of the things, that's why I wanted to make sure that I got this point in. Maybe it's not something I say enough. It's hard to get because it's incredibly early. We still haven't released a testnet yet. And a lot of people come in and they go, when are you going to do this? And when are you going to do that? And when are you going to get on exchanges? And maybe what I should say more is, you clearly maybe don't realize how early we are in this. We haven't launched a testnet yet. We've given public guidance on that. We are on schedule for all of that. Sit back and relax. We'll tell you when things change. But our priority in this launch was launching in a way to make sure that people who love the team, love the vision, and love the nature of the innovations that we're building are able to get the token. And I think we've more than met that objective. It is hard, right? Because blockchain is hard. That's what we're trying to change with Koinos. But that's why we need to build Koinos, is because it is so hard, and because using these technologies is so difficult. But anyone can solve these problems with centralized solutions. The objective is to solve them with decentralized solutions.
Well, I appreciate you putting in the hard work so that I don't have to.
That's what we're here.
It's very nice of you.
Happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, if you have any questions about Koinos, let us know. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. See ya.